Hey everyone, welcome back to Midnight Recaps. Imagine waking up one day with the perfect body, unlimited fame, and a second chance at life, only to discover that every moment of happiness comes at the cost of your own existence. Tonight's nightmare is The Substance 2023. The movie begins with someone injecting a mysterious green liquid into an egg yolk. The yolk immediately splits in two and creates an identical copy. The story then moves to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where we see the star of famous actress Elisabeth Sparkle. At first, crowds of fans gather around it, showing how popular she once was. As the years pass, fewer people pay attention to her until her star becomes just another part of the sidewalk. Elisabeth is the beloved host of the hit TV aerobics show Sparkle It Up, but behind the bright lights and cheerful smiles, cracks are already beginning to show. After finishing an episode, she heads to the women's restroom, only to find it out of order. Left with no choice, she slips into the men's restroom. When she hears someone approaching, she quickly hides. From her hiding spot, she overhears the network's president, Harvey, casually discussing plans to replace her simply because she's turned 50. It's a brutally honest moment that reveals just how ruthless the entertainment industry can be. To Harvey, talent and experience mean nothing once someone is no longer considered young enough. Elisabeth quietly steps out, visibly heartbroken after hearing the conversation. As if that wasn't humiliating enough, she later has lunch with Harvey, who greedily stuffs his face with shrimp while discussing her future with complete indifference. The scene perfectly reflects his selfish and insensitive personality. After finishing the meal, Harvey leaves with his friend, while Elisabeth is left alone to process the painful realization that her career may already be coming to an end. While driving home, Elisabeth notices workers removing a giant billboard with her picture on it. The sight distracts her, causing her to lose control of her car and crash. She survives the accident and is taken to a hospital. After the doctor leaves the room, a young nurse examines her and quietly tells her that she is a perfect candidate. Before Elisabeth leaves, the nurse secretly slips a flash drive into her jacket pocket. Outside the hospital, Elisabeth notices the flash drive and then runs into Fred, a former classmate from high school. Fred tells her she is still beautiful and gives her his phone number before they part ways. Back home, Elisabeth watches the contents of the flash drive. It is an advertisement for a product called The Substance. A recorded voice explains that it allows a person to experience life through a younger and improved version of themselves. The only condition is that the two bodies must switch every 7 days. Thinking the idea is ridiculous, Elisabeth throws the flash drive into the trash. As the days go by, however, she struggles with loneliness and begins missing the life she once had. Eventually, she changes her mind and calls the number from the advertisement. The person on the phone gives her an address and ends the call. The following day, Elisabeth receives an identification card and visits the location. It leads her to a hidden building inside a quiet alley. She uses the card to unlock the entrance and finds a deposit box assigned to her. After returning home, she opens the box and inside is a package containing the substance, several medical supplies, and detailed instructions. Elisabeth decides to use it. She injects herself with the green liquid, and almost immediately her body begins reacting. She falls to the floor as something starts moving beneath the skin on her back. Moments later, a large opening forms along her back, and a younger woman emerges from inside her body. The young woman looks at herself in the mirror before stitching Elisabeth's wound closed. She then follows the instructions by feeding and maintaining Elisabeth's unconscious body so it remains alive. A short time later, the young woman suddenly becomes weak, feels dizzy, and starts bleeding from her nose. She checks the supplies and discovers a stabilizer kit. Following the instructions, she extracts a special fluid from Elisabeth's body and injects herself, which immediately restores her strength. She then gives herself the name Sue and auditions for the same television network where Elisabeth used to work. Harvey is impressed with her confidence and appearance, and she quickly gets the job. Sue soon becomes the network's newest star and enjoys the attention that comes with her new life. After 7 days, it is time to switch back. Elisabeth wakes up and returns to her normal routine, but her life now feels quiet and uneventful. She later visits the studio to collect the rest of her belongings while Harvey barely acknowledges her. Back at home, Elisabeth receives a message informing her that another refill kit has arrived. She returns to the hidden building and collects it. When Sue takes over again, she builds a hidden room inside the bathroom where Elisabeth's unconscious body can remain safely hidden during each switch. The construction noise attracts an angry neighbor who knocks on the door to complain. However, when he sees Sue instead of Elisabeth, his attitude changes completely. He starts flirting with her and even offers to help, but Sue politely refuses before taking Elisabeth's body into the hidden room. Not long afterward, Sue becomes the host of her own fitness show called Pump It Up. Because of her growing popularity, Harvey agrees to work around her unusual weekly schedule. A few hours before it is time to switch back, Sue decides to spend one more night enjoying herself. She meets a man named Troy and brings him home. During the night, her nose suddenly starts bleeding, and she begins feeling weak because her 7-day limit has already expired. Instead of switching back, Sue reuses one of the stabilizer tubes to extract more fluid from Elisabeth's body. After injecting herself, she goes back to Troy and stays with him until morning. When Elisabeth wakes up, she notices that her right hand has become old and badly wrinkled. She rushes to the bathroom and tries washing it, hoping it will return to normal, but nothing changes. She calls the number connected to the substance and explains what happened. The voice tells her that the damage cannot be reversed because Sue stayed active longer than she was supposed to. It also reminds Elisabeth that Sue is not a different person but another version of herself, so they must both follow the rules equally. Later, while cleaning her apartment, Elisabeth sees Sue's fitness show playing on television. Feeling jealous, she immediately turns it off. After collecting another refill kit, Elisabeth stops at a diner. There she notices an elderly man with the same birthmark as the nurse who first introduced her to the substance. The man reveals that he also used it and asks if her younger self has already started taking more from her than she should. His words leave Elisabeth worried, so she quickly leaves the diner. Outside, she accidentally runs into Troy as he is picking up his motorcycle. Since he has never seen Elisabeth before, he simply tells her to move out of the way before riding off. Back at home, Elisabeth finds Fred's phone number and decides to give him a call. When Fred answers, she accepts his invitation to dinner. He is excited to hear from her and immediately makes a reservation for the two of them. After getting dressed and putting on her makeup, Elisabeth is about to leave when she notices a large billboard advertising Sue's show outside her window. Seeing it makes her lose confidence. She walks back into the bathroom and stares at herself in the mirror for a moment before wiping off her makeup. In the end, she decides not to go to the dinner and never contacts Fred again. During a taping of Sue's show, she messes up a take because she feels something bulging against her backside. Harvey asks the crew to play the footage back. Hoping no one notices what she fears is happening, Sue quickly covers herself up and walks out of the room. She goes to the bathroom and pushes the lump down her leg and out through her belly button, where it turns out to be a whole chicken leg. Sue then calls the number for the substance to complain about Elisabeth's binge drinking and eating habits, saying that she barely has time to enjoy her own life. Later, Sue arrives at the studio and learns that the taping for her show has been canceled. When she meets with Harvey, he tells her that she has become so popular that the network wants her to host the New Year's Eve special. Sue happily accepts and begins spending more time in her young body than she is supposed to. When she finally switches back, Elisabeth has aged even more. She looks frail and worn out, and her legs are so weak that she can barely walk. Desperate, Elisabeth calls the number for the substance to complain that Sue has been taking more than her share of time. The voice on the other end asks if she wants to terminate the process, reminding her that she is the original body. However, it also explains that the damage already done to her body cannot be reversed. After thinking it over, Elisabeth decides not to stop. To keep herself occupied, Elisabeth starts cooking meals from a French cookbook Harvey once gave her. At the same time, she watches Sue becoming even more successful, including an interview where Sue makes fun of Elisabeth's old television show. When Sue switches back again, she finds the apartment dirty and messy. Angry about everything Elisabeth has been doing, Sue extracts enough stabilizing fluid to last for 3 months instead of taking only what she needs. She then spends all her time preparing for the New Year's Eve special. Eventually, Sue tries using the stabilizing fluid again, but it has turned dark and unusable. Soon afterward, she becomes weak and starts feeling dizzy. She calls the company, and the voice explains that she has reached the limit of her young body. The only way to restore the stabilizer is to switch back to Elisabeth. Sue collapses to the floor from exhaustion. With no other choice, she painfully crawls back to Elisabeth's body and switches. When Elisabeth wakes up, she is transformed into a severely deformed old woman with a hunched back. Realizing she can no longer continue, Elisabeth calls the company and asks to terminate the substance. She collects the termination kit and returns home. After dragging Sue's unconscious body into the living room, she opens the package and finds a syringe filled with a black liquid. Elisabeth begins injecting it into Sue's chest but stops before emptying the entire syringe. Unable to go through with it, she pulls the needle out and desperately tries to revive Sue. Moments later, Sue opens her eyes and finds herself face to face with Elisabeth. Both of them stare at each other in shock and confusion before Sue suddenly attacks her. Elisabeth manages to run into the bathroom and lock the door, thinking she is safe. Seconds later, Sue breaks through the door, slams Elisabeth against the wall, and repeatedly smashes her face into a mirror. Badly injured, Elisabeth crawls into the living room, but Sue catches up, knocks her onto a glass table, and repeatedly kicks her until she dies. After killing Elisabeth, Sue heads to the television studio to prepare for the New Year's Eve special and changes into her dress. Before the show begins, she suddenly starts feeling unwell and rushes to the bathroom. There, her body begins to fall apart. 3 of her front teeth fall out, leaving her terrified. Trying not to attract attention, Sue quietly leaves the studio. While riding down in the elevator, her fingernails begin falling off, followed by her left ear. She rushes home and finds the activator fluid that was only meant to be used once. Hoping it will create another younger body, Sue injects herself. Instead, she transforms into a monstrous creature with multiple limbs, extra body parts, and Elisabeth's face attached to its back. The creature puts on Sue's dress, styles its hair, covers its face with a poster of Elisabeth, and applies lipstick before returning to the television studio. Monstro then makes its way back to the television studio. It manages to get past security and walks onto the stage just as the New Year's Eve special begins. As Monstro starts speaking to the audience, the fake face covering its head suddenly falls off, revealing its horrifying appearance. The audience immediately panics and begins screaming. People rush the stage and start attacking Monstro. One person strikes it with a microphone stand, blowing its head apart. However, the head quickly regenerates. During the chaos, one of Monstro's arms tears off, spraying blood across the audience and covering the entire studio in gore. Monstro manages to escape from the studio before its body finally collapses and falls apart. From the remains, leaving a fleshy mass with Elisabeth's original face. Using the last of her strength, Elisabeth slowly crawls toward her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. As she reaches it, she looks up and imagines sparkling lights shining down on her once again. With a smile on her face, Elisabeth takes one final look at her star before melting into a puddle of goo. The following morning, a street cleaning machine washes away the remains, leaving no trace of Elisabeth behind. That's the end of tonight's recap. If you made it this far, you clearly enjoy horror recaps. Subscribe so you don't miss the next terrifying story. What did you think of this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're craving another terrifying story, tap the video on your screen right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one.